Good morning and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. This week after Father's Day, we are looking at some fathers throughout the Bible, focusing each day on one pretty bad father and one pretty good father. As I have reflected on the fathers we will look at and how they are described in the Bible as fathers, there's one thing that seems somewhat consistent. We decide if the fathers are good or bad based on how their kids turned out. In other words, as we see how their children turned out, we get some idea of how their father was as a father. And that's true for the fathers we will look at today, Samuel and Noah. We actually talked a little bit about Samuel yesterday as we considered Eli, the high priest who raised Samuel in the worship center at Shiloh. If you watched yesterday, you learned that while Eli guided Samuel in the way of God, Eli's own sons were corrupt and self-serving. Well, it looks a lot like Samuel's sons were a lot like the sons of Eli. Samuel is the last in the line of judges over Israel. After him, there's a king to lead the nation, so judges gave way to prophets to help guide the king in God's way. Samuel was a judge during the time of Saul, but was also around to anoint David to be king after Saul. Samuel had two sons, one named Joel and a second named Abijah. Now here's the thing. While Samuel's chief role as judge was to deliver the people from oppression by an enemy, in times of peace he was called on to judge between the people. In other words, when disputes arose among two or more people, they would come to Samuel to decide their lawsuit, thinking that his connection with God would give him correct insight for a fair decision in line with God's will. As Samuel aged, to help ease the burden of this responsibility, he appointed his two sons to take over some of these duties. And that's when we come to 1 Samuel chapter 8, where the Bible tells us, "When Samuel became old, he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn son was Joel, and the name of his second Abijah, and they were judges in Beersheba. Yet his sons did not follow in his ways, but turned aside after gain. They took bribes and perverted justice." This turns out to be a rather sad circumstance in the history of Israel, because the corruption of Samuel's sons leads directly to the people asking for a king to rule them. That's a big deal, because in Israel, God was supposed to be their king. In fact, when the people ask Samuel for a king, God says, "Give them a king. It is not you they have rejected, but me." Throughout the Bible, Samuel seems to be a man of faith and integrity. However, he didn't seem to pass that along to his children. On the other hand, we can look at the example of Noah. When we think of Noah, we most likely focus on the story with the ark, and we think about the animals and all that rain. We don't think often about the sons of Noah, three men named Shem, Ham, and Japheth. What kind of father was Noah? Well, let me remind you of the story. God had made creation, but then sin got involved, and rather quickly things turned out pretty bad. So bad, in fact, that God decided to wipe it all out and start over. Except for Noah and his family, who had remained good and faithful. Now, let me put that in perspective for you. The whole world was so wicked and evil that God decided to wipe it all away and start over. Somehow, in the midst of a world that wicked, Noah managed to remain faithful to God and live God's way, and he taught his children to do the same. Noah did what Samuel failed to do, and brought his children up God's way. That's what a father is supposed to do with his children. So when the floods came, it wasn't just Noah and his wife who were saved. It was Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, and their wives. And from them God made a new beginning. To be an example of faith lived with integrity. That's what a father is supposed to be. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.